great state of New Jersey. Let's talk about the Supreme Court for a second.
Yeah.
One of the things that people are speculation is that something as foundational to the modern American view of equality, Brown v. Board of Education, could fall under the Supreme Court. Yeah. What do you make? Is that alarmist, or would you not put this past them?
I take Donald Trump at his word and listen to people, what they say to you. I've been on the Judiciary Committee now for years, and I was stunned when I saw a change that justices, including some of these Supreme Court justices that he appointed, came before us, and when asked directly, was Brown versus Board of Education rightfully decided, they would not answer one way or the other. This idea that we are a nation of equality, the fundamental establishment in that case of this truth about America is that we should be a nation of equality and justice for all. Something as foundational as that now is being put into the sphere of being in question by jurists or refusing to affirm those ideals. And so I have been shaken by seeing things happen in our federal judiciary that I never imagined possible. Let me give you an example, if I can. One of Donald Trump's extreme justices that he put on in the state of Texas decided that, you know what, after almost 25 years of mifepristone, medical abortion being available to people in the United States, the number one means with which women often use that medication for abortions, something that's been used out of the country for more than 25 years, one judge with no medical training decided to upend that and freeze its usage. It is an extreme nature of the people he's putting on the court to take precedents, to take patterns, practices, and upturn them. And me and a lot of my colleagues now, realizing what's happening and some of the rhetoric coming out of the Supreme Court in concurring opinions and more, have made us move to protect same-sex marriage, have made us move to protect things like in vitro fertilization.
Now, you've introduced a bill. Okay, you've introduced a bill. You, Tammy Duckworth, and Patty Murray announced 4 new bills related to IVF that will be voted this week. GOP says they're not anti-IVF. Do you expect this legislation to pass or to be blocked with filibuster?
Look, I'm tired of time and time again in a season runner up to an election where Donald Trump is dictating what's going to happen in the United States Senate or the House of Representatives.
Is he dictating this?
I again, am going to do everything I can to what I think to protect fundamental rights that have been hard-earned by generations of Americans in both parties. This legislation needs to pass because of what we've seen that Donald Trump is capable of. But let's just, people hear this, IVF, this is what I believe. Number one is that families should have access to in vitro fertilization. Number two is I think it should not be, many families know how utterly expensive this is. It shouldn't be the purview of just the wealthy. Employer-based health insurance plans should cover this. That's what we have. And another one of the bills, which people should know what we're trying to do, is if you are a person serving the United States military and you're going to go overseas in conflict zones where you're going to be exposed to all kinds of challenges, our military should have access to IVF, the ability to freeze their eggs and to ensure their reproductive freedom. So these are non-controversial bills, but I will tell you this. The majority of Americans, to 70 to 80%, and look at these ballot initiatives from Kansas and other red states, the majority of Americans believe in Roe v. Wade, but that was stripped away from us by the courts. The majority of Americans believe that we should have common sense universal background checks, but that's been blocked time and time again by Republican Congress. The majority of Americans believe that we should have access to IVF. I do not trust these Trump-appointed judges the last time he got in there and packed our courts with extreme right-wing folks. I do not trust them to secure our rights. Congress must act.
We're going to take another break here, but we'll be right back with more Cory Booker. Everybody, stick around.